Okay, so just a quick shout out here to Amy Rose. She's sitting next to me with her brand new 11-inch MacBook Air without Retina. Oh, sorry, Amy Rose. No, you're not part of the class, though. That's not going to be helpful. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about something called the cell cycle. And I'm doing this in the middle of the Science Center, so you might hear some background noise. Tough, that's what you get. The cell cycle is one of those things that helps really to give you a good perspective on what we're doing, because we're going to start continuing actually in our context of the minutia of the cell. You know, we've been talking about molecular genetics, which is really tiny stuff. We're going to move up a little bit to the entire cell, but even though we're doing that, it's still going to be pretty small stuff that we're looking at here. So any cell that you look at inside your body, or even one that's a cell that's free living and independent, is going to go through this thing called the cell cycle. And because it's a cycle, there's really no starting point or ending point, but I'm going to force one here. So let me give us a new page here. And let's see, how can I do this best? So here we have a clock face of sorts. And I'm going to start here with this little green asterisk over in this side, and I'm going to draw a sweep, another concentric arc all the way down to where you see the arrowhead. And I'm going to call this the G1, or growth phase. Okay? And sometimes people call it gap. Doesn't really make a difference. You can call it whatever you want. No, that's not true. You can't call it whatever you want. So G1, and then we move into this yellow stage down here. And oh, Amy Rose just left. She got sick of me.
It's because you made fun of my retina display.
Oh, sorry, Amy Rose. Bye. And for this, we call this phase. Ooh, that's not a good letter. It's an S, the S phase, and S stands for synthesis. And it's during synthesis that DNA replication takes place. Your friend. And then we go to the next thing, which is drawing a red arrow, or red arc, I should say. And this is going to be our G2 phase. And again, same as G1, it's also known as growth or gap. I think I put quotes around gap on the other one, so I'm doing it here. And then we end with, at the top here, I'm going to use blue, what we call the M phase. Now, I'm not going to tell you what M phase is. You probably know what it is, but I'm not going to tell you about what's going on there quite yet. So let's talk about what's happening in each one of these stages in particular, in more detail. So we have over here, let's go red again, in our growth phase, all the things that a cell normally does will happen in this growth phase. So if it's you know that cellular respiration has to happen. If you're a plant cell, then photosynthesis. Any cell is going to be doing what we were just covering in class, protein synthesis. And you could be going way back to the fall term, doing some cell dynamics, so moving things in and out of your membrane. And don't forget, that might be phagocytosis or pinocytosis or exo or an endocytosis that are going on there. So all the things that you'd expect a cell to be able to do, those things are happening right now and during that G1 phase. And during that period of the cell's life, it's obviously going to be, or maybe not so obviously, it's going to be potentially growing in size. And when you grow in size, one of the big issues you have is that you increase in volume, but you don't have the same rate of increase for your surface area. And don't forget, that's a really important thing. You want to try to maximize your surface area to volume ratio when it comes to being a cell, because the more you interact with your environment, the easier it is to take in nutrients and to get rid of wastes. So as you increase in volume, you don't increase, since volume increases at a cube, surface area increases at a square. you're going to have a problem pretty soon of having too low a surface area to volume ratio. Remember that, going back to those gelatin cubes and the phenolphthalein? You probably don't remember. Too bad. And this brings us down to the synthesis stage. As I said before, this is where DNA replication takes place. Now, don't forget that in order for a cell to be able to function properly, it needs to, a new cell, if it were to develop, needs to have a full set of DNA so that it has the instructions to make the proper proteins that allow it to function as whatever type of cell it is. So by not replicating the DNA, you'd be in trouble. You have to have a copy of those instructions, and those instructions have to be perfect, right? They cannot have any missing pieces or mistakes or anything in it. And we all understand how DNA replication works because you did a stop action on it. So I'm not going to go into the details of that other than to tell you that it has to happen before the next stage, which is the second growth stage. Everything that we saw happening in the first growth stage, cell respiration, photosynthesis, protein synthesis, membrane transport, all that stuff is also happening in this phase too. And again, we continue to grow. And if you're continuing to grow, then you have a decrease in your surface area to volume, which is an issue, right? So that brings us up to this M phase. And the M phase is where cell division takes place. And you shouldn't be too surprised to now understand that you need to undergo cell division so that you can reassert your surface area, your high surface area to volume ratio. Not only that, you might need to grow if you're an organism that needs to grow. Do you hear that shaking going on there? Can you believe it? Shaking her yogurt. So with cell division going on there, it allows you to replace cells that have been lost due to injury or death. You're also going to, what? Why are you looking at me like that? It expired?
It expired.
Well, you better go change it out. Run next door. And yeah, good. Now quiet down so I can finish this. Or you may need to grow. Totally lost track of what I was saying. Fine. Anyway, I totally lost track, and it's your fault.
No,
Yeah, it is your fault. No, that was old. That was before. Now, the thing that bugs me is that, really, I'm not sure why we have chosen to call cell division, the part of the cell cycle called cell division, the M phase. Actually, I do know, but it really makes me angry. The M stands for mitosis. And you should know that that's going to be the thing that we're stepping into in the next couple of days here in lab. But mitosis is a part of cell division. You should understand that mitosis plus cytokinesis makes up cell division. Mitosis happens to be division of the nucleus, and cytokinesis is division of every other part of the cell, which is, a pretty important thing. You can't have a cell without also having all the other parts that make it work. So just dividing the nucleus, while it is probably the most important part, will not be able to function on its own. I wish we could change it and call it the CD stage for cell division rather than the M phase for mitosis. All right, one other thing that you should know here is that there are some cells that, following mitosis very early in the stage of the organism, they go to what's called the G0 stage. And if this is the case, they never will actually undergo DNA replication. They'll never go through the S phase, and therefore they'll never have a G2 phase, and they're never going to undergo cell division. These cells, once they're created, they may grow, but they're never going to divide again. And examples of that, there are some neurons that do that. And so they're fixed once they're created. The danger of that being that since they can't divide, if they're destroyed, then you can't replace them. And clearly we all understand spinal cord injury is something that's completely heinous because those neurons that make up your spinal cord cannot be replaced if they're ever destroyed, say through severing, etc. Okay, one last thing I want to make sure I throw into you. Oh, you have a question? Hold on, I'm going to pause this. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to add here, and I'm going to use pink, which is this whole section, the G1, the S, and the G2, collectively have a name. So I'm going from the pink asterisk all the way around to the beginning of the M phase. This is called interphase. And interphase is basically when everything happens in a cell other than cell division. But most of the life of a cell is spent in interphase doing all these things, right? Whether it's DNA replication or all the growth-related things that are happening in here. Okay, I think that's it. I'm just going to write one last thing, which is put cell cycle into the middle here. And that looks like it. Okay, bye.